During last August, New Zealand Minister of Territory Education, Skills and Employment, Steve Joyce, visited Vietnam to sign a Memorandum of Understanding 2015 between the two ministries of education and training. This document not only marks the 40th year of bilateral relations, but also provides a framework for cooperation and sharing educational experiences for the benefit of both parties.
New Zealand đã giúp đỡ chúng tôi rất có hiệu quả trong việc đào tạo, nâng cao cái năng lực hội nhập quốc tế, góp phần vào cái phát triển kinh tế xã hội của đất nước và đào tạo những chuyên gia trình độ cao cho các cái lĩnh vực mà Việt Nam đang rất là cần.
We have passed many milestones together, and today a new path is being set for education and cooperation between our two countries that will see our relationship continue to grow and prosper. Creativity, innovation and quality are at the absolute core of our education system in New Zealand. And these attributes are reflected in the way our students learn, in the way we train our teachers, and the way we develop our officials. I know this is also a focus for Vietnam, that through an education system that is focused on excellence, your country will continue to grow and prosper.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Sharing Vietnam on VTC10 NetViet. With the potentials of cooperations in the field of education, we're here today with the Ambassador of New Zealand in Vietnam, and we will share with us about the next cooperations in education and what are some activities that the Embassy of New Zealand would like to promote in Vietnam in the near future. Thank you, Your Excellency, for joining us. First of all, we know that recently the Minister of Education of New Zealand has paid a visit to Vietnam, and this marked with the MOU between the two ministries of education. So how will this MOU being a foundations for the future cooperations in the field of education?
We were really pleased to have our Minister, Stephen Joyce, Education Minister, visit Vietnam in August, and he had a great visit. And I think what came out very clearly from that was that there is a lot of potential in the education relationship between New Zealand and Vietnam, and we're really looking at what we can do next to take the education relationship forward. Some of the areas we're very focused on are looking at how we can build institutional linkages, so where we have New Zealand universities and Vietnamese universities working together. And in fact, since the visit and the signing of the MOU, we've actually seen a number of universities come back here and meet with their partners and look at how they can build up new programs. So I think that's really positive. And as we look towards the end of the year, we're looking at trying to agree a 3-year strategic plan between New Zealand and Vietnam to really push forward that education relationship. The next big milestone, which is a joint education commission, which is where the two governments come together and they sit down at officials level and work out like a roadmap for taking forward the education relationship, and that will happen in October.
And what are your assessment about the achievements in the field of education between Vietnam and New Zealand?
For us, education is like a key pillar in the relationship that we have with Vietnam. It's really a way of building lifelong connections between the two countries, so we're very focused on it. We have around 2,000 Vietnamese students studying in New Zealand every year, and we're very keen to see that number increase because of the great experience that the Vietnamese students have in New Zealand, and they come back with a little piece of New Zealand in their hearts, which is fantastic for our relationship in future. But I think that there is a lot of upside and a lot of potential which we haven't yet realised in the education relationship, which is why we're working so hard to really try and build links, whether it's between government to government or whether it's institutions working together to build those links. And we've done some really important education-related events. For example, last month we had our first ever fashion collaboration, which brought together New Zealand and Vietnamese students collaborating together long distance to produce unique collections of garments which spoke to the fusion or the connection between the two cultures. So that's something we've never done before, and it was very successful. Everyone was very enthusiastic about it. And now we are currently running an education and culture roadshow throughout some of the top high schools in Vietnam. And again, this is the first time New Zealand has ever done anything like this in Vietnam. And it's a really exciting way, I think, for many thousands of Vietnamese students to get a unique taste of New Zealand, to understand a little bit more about education and about New Zealand's education system, and to learn about our culture, because the centrepiece of the roadshows is the Māori performance group that we've brought up from New Zealand to perform with the kids.
New Zealand is a country with highly developed education programs with globally recognized qualification. The strength in higher education in New Zealand lies in the fields of agricultural, forestry, aviation, public policy, law, economics, health, and vocational training. Vietnam ranked 11th among the countries with most students studying in New Zealand. With more than 2,000 students each year, educational memorandum of understanding gradually creates richness and creativity in bilateral educational activities. This year, New Zealand strengthened cultural exchanges by bringing New Zealand students to Vietnam, participating in a peer-to-peer fashion collaboration program held at Hanoi University of Fine Arts, or recently introduced Maori culture, the indigenous people of New Zealand, through performances at the Hanoi Amsterdam High School.
Em thấy chương trình này rất là bổ ích đối với bọn em, và trước khi xem chương trình này thì em cũng không biết là người Maori là dân tộc bản địa của New Zealand, và khi xem chương trình này em cảm thấy hứng thú hơn trong việc và cho em thêm nhiều động lực học về việc đi du học ở New Zealand.
New Zealand thì thường em không tìm hiểu nhiều lắm ạ. Thì hôm nay đến thì em đã từng biết New Zealand là đất nước hạnh phúc nhất thế giới. Thì thực sự khi mà xem các video clip thì em thấy nó rất là đúng. Cái cách nói chuyện của con người là những cái vũ công là người ta rất là thoải mái, rất là tự nhiên. Em cảm thấy rất là thích thú. Số dân ở New Zealand còn không bằng số dân của Hà Nội cộng với Hồ Chí Minh. Không có nhiều dân nhưng người ta sống rất là hòa bình và rất là thân thiện. Chất lượng cuộc sống thì được đề cao và chất lượng giáo dục như thế.
These activities are in a series of events with the theme New Zealand Welcoming New Things, organized by the Embassies of New Zealand, celebrating 40 years of diplomatic relations between Vietnam and New Zealand. Creative educational cooperation activities not only benefit the development of education sector, but also create strong people-to-people ties between the two countries. Being one of 10 New Zealand students coming to Vietnam participating in fashion collaboration project, Megan Stewart had a chance to experience the beauty of Vietnamese culture and, more importantly, collaborate with Vietnamese peers. This is such an eye-opening opportunity for this 22-year-old girl.
Because in New Zealand, I don't know, we're quite like isolated in a way with things like that. So we're used, especially with our Messi, we're quite like small in our design year. So it's just so exciting to talk to someone from like a different culture and see what their new idea is. So me being 22 and finally coming out of like my comfort zone was amazing. At first I was a bit overwhelmed, but I love it. Like now I don't really want to go.
And to celebrate the 40 years of diplomatic relations, New Zealand has implemented many dynamic projects such as the fashion collaborations or the recent event today that is the cultural tour of Maori culture. So what are some of the similar projects that New Zealand would like to carry out in the near future?
These are all very interesting and I think quite innovative ways of promoting our education relationship. Looking ahead, we are thinking of another couple of activities. The first one is focused very much on our alumni, because we have many, I'd say thousands now, of Vietnamese students who have studied in New Zealand and then have returned to Vietnam. And we want to find a way to really connect with them and create a lifelong connection between New Zealand and our alumni. So we'll be running a couple of big alumni networking events in Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh City in the coming months. And then looking ahead to next year, what we're thinking about at the moment is doing something involving food, because everyone likes food, and bringing together students and chefs from both countries, again in some sort of collaboration which we would bring to Vietnam. And I think that will really showcase education, but also the food connections between the two countries. So that's something to look forward to for next year.
So as we all know that Vietnam is the 11 largest numbers of students that are studying in New Zealand. So what about bringing New Zealand students coming to Vietnam to experience studying in Vietnam?
This is something that we are encouraging, and we want to see many more New Zealand students come to Vietnam and to other countries in the region, because New Zealand government realises and understands that our future, our economic future, our peace and security is very much dependent on understanding this part of the world and countries like Vietnam. A couple of years ago, our Prime Minister launched a special program called Scholarships for Asia, and through that program, the last 2 years, we've been able to bring up groups of students from New Zealand, sort of like over their summer break, and they come up here and they spend a week or 10 days learning about Vietnam, and then they go to some other countries in the region as well. So that's a small step, but it's a really important step, and I think it indicates the interest in our government in really promoting two-way movement of students. And of course, Vietnam is our fastest growing trading partner in the ASEAN region. I think as Vietnam grows in importance to New Zealand, becomes even more important, we'll see more and more interest from New Zealand students to learn about Vietnam. So I think some of that will also happen by the students themselves and not just through the governments.
So overall, what are your comments about the potentials there are for cooperations in the field of education between Vietnam and New Zealand?
So New Zealand has what is regarded as one of the best education systems in the world. All of our universities are in the top 500 in the world. We're the only country in the world that can actually say that all of our universities are in the top 500. And the reason why we have really good quality and consistent quality is because we have a great system. And so as we think about how we can build our relationship with Vietnam, we're not just talking about those those institutional linkages between universities, and we're not just talking about students from Vietnam to New Zealand. We're also talking about how we can engage with Vietnam as Vietnam continues to improve its own education system. And many of the lessons that we've learnt in New Zealand around our qualifications framework, our teacher training, all these sorts of things, I believe are areas where we can work really effectively together with Vietnam. I think the MOU is important. I think what's more important is action, and we need to now come together as the two governments and really agree some concrete projects and initiatives to take forward. So some of the things that we've talked about in the area of qualification system, in the area of exchange of students, building those institutional linkages, those are the things that are really important, and that's where I'm going to be focused. And that's where I'm going to be recommending that my government focuses in the coming time.
Thank you, Your Excellency, so much for joining Sharing Vietnam today.
Thank you.
And that's the end for Sharing Vietnam today. Thank you so much for watching us. Any comments and feedback, please email to sharingvietnam@netvittv.net. Thank you and see you again.